There are times when we would like to insert a table containing data into our word processor, into our document. For example, I want to insert a table which can show data of temperatures recorded in a day across 4 cities. So let's see how to do that. So the easiest option to insert a table is to click on this icon here. This looks like a table, and you click on that, we get options to choose how many rows and how many columns we need. I just need to move the mouse around. I don't need to click it, just moving the mouse around will suffice. So I want, let's say, 5 rows and 2 columns. So once I'm happy with my selection, which is showing in purple in my case, I click and it inserts. There is another way of inserting tables. Let's explore that. Let me undo this. There is this undo button on the toolbar. I can click on it, or I can say edit undo. It's the same thing. The shortcut for this is Control and Z. So let me use the toolbar button for this. So I just undid inserting of the table. So there is another way. We said there is another way to insert table. For that, click on table and insert table. As it shows, the shortcut for inserting table is Control and the function key 12. Control F12 also inserts table. So let me click on insert table in this case. So I get an option. So I choose the same thing. How many columns do I need? I need 2 columns. How many rows do I need? I would say let me choose 7 columns. So I really don't know how many columns I need. Let me choose 7 for now, and both of these can be changed later. We can insert more columns, we can delete columns, we can insert more rows, we can delete more rows, but this is to start with. I want 2 columns and 7 rows. So I click on insert. I can also provide a name which becomes the metadata. So I'm calling it temp and click on insert. So I've got 7 rows and 2 columns. So I need column headings. I will provide one heading here. I will call it city, and this one as temperature. The rest of the typing of the text I can do here. I can move from one cell to another by pressing the tab key on my keyboard, or I can use the mouse to place the cursor in different cells, or I can even use the arrow keys. Right now I'm using the mouse to keep the cursor there. Let me start with the metros. And let me also add, let's say, Bangalore. So I've added all the city names, and initially I thought I will need 7 rows, but seems like I don't need this last one. So what can we do about it? We discussed that these can be adjusted. So let me delete this row. How do I do it? I place the cursor in the row that I don't need. I right click and I choose the option delete. I have 3 options here. In my case, I want to delete the row, so let me choose rows. So that's gone. Now I'm thinking I also want another column before the city column, maybe to contain the number like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I want to add or insert another column. Similar to deleting a row is inserting the column. Let's say I click on this cell, right click, and I get the option to insert. I want to insert a column. Now do I want to insert a column to the left or to the right? In my case I want left, so I'm choosing left. So I get to type in the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Now I'll call this hash, which is the shorter form for the serial number. So I'm happy with this. Now However, each of these columns are taking way too much space. It's not appropriate. So I want to resize the width of these columns. For example, this is a very narrow column, so I want to resize this. How can I do that? I move the mouse pointer to this border and the cursor becomes a two-sided arrow. Once it does that, once it becomes a two-sided arrow, I click and drag. This seems fine, so I leave it there, and this is also too much, so again I go to this border and I wait, or I make sure that it becomes a two-sided arrow, and then I click and I drag, and the same thing again. So I can resize my table like this. This looks fine. Now I need to start typing in temperature here. 1 2 3 4 5. I'll type in the temperatures, but I have two sets, that is I have a maximum and a minimum, so I need two columns here. I need a maximum column and a minimum column. So I can now, what I need to do is I need to split this table. So I can split these columns. I can do that by selecting these and then right clicking and then clicking on split. Oh, there's no option here. So what I can do is again select table, split cells. Okay, now I get this dialog box. It is giving me a couple of options. How many parts do I need? I need two parts, one part for maximum, one part for minimum. That looks good, and I want to split it more like this representation vertically, so I need my columns to be split like this. So I choose vertically and click OK. Now I can type maximum here and minimum here. I'm running into another issue, which is I need to also have a subheading to the temperature. I want to say maximum and minimum, but here, for example, let me say 32, 34, okay, and let me also type a few numbers. This is a minimum. Let me type maximum. Let me keep it in its 40s. Right, but I also need a subheading saying minimum and maximum. How do I do it? We have done this before. We click and we right click and we choose insert. What do I want to insert? This time I want to insert a row above this cursor, so I choose rows above, and there I get to write minimum and also maximum. That looks good. So there is another couple of things that's happened with this choice. One is I have two empty cells here and it doesn't look good. So what I can do is I can merge these two cells. How do you merge cells? Select, and once I'm selecting, I can right click and I can choose merge. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is select table, merge cells. So these two look much better now. So I have this nice table that is showing me the minimum and maximum temperatures. There is one other thing I can do that can make this entire thing look a little better, which is alignment. We already know alignment, and these things are very simple. Let me choose this column. I can choose it like that, or I can take the mouse right to the top of the column and you see the cursor becomes an arrow. So I'm ready to select the entire column. I can click that and the entire thing is chosen. Now I want it to be center aligned. How do I do it? There is an icon here that says center horizontally, so I can choose that. This looks much better. There is another way of doing it. I would let you guys explore that option. This looks good for me now. And I also want to make sure that these two are also centrally aligned, which is this, but I also want it in the middle. I don't want it to be sticking to the top. So how do I do it? I select, I right click, and I go to alignment, and it says top. I don't want top, I want center. I choose center. So this table looks a little prettier than it used to now because of all the alignments. Like I said initially, we start with a certain number of columns and rows, and later we can keep changing the properties of the table, and we can insert more rows, delete rows, insert columns, delete columns, we can merge cells, we can split cells, etc. There are a few more properties that we can change, and how we can do it is click anywhere within the table, and under the table menu there is this option called properties, which is the last option. You click on that and we get a lot of options here, and you can play around with this. We can play around with the style of the bordering we need, and the background color you need, and so on and so forth. So this is for everybody to explore, and you can also bring this about by right clicking anywhere in the table and choosing table properties. That will take you to the same place. So these are the two things that you can explore to see how you can make this table suit you much better.